exhausting.
Yeah, I bet.
I've enjoyed it. Enjoying the new role?
Hi, everyone. I was a bit nervous about this being the last panel of the day. I mean, usually that's when people get hungry and a bit tired, but I feel like it's been helpful that they said the bar is not opening until this is over. And I feel like at least this is the panel where we have like the most fashionably dressed panelists, and we get to talk about like penguins and apes and video games. And so hopefully this is gonna like keep you here. I'm really excited to have my speakers today. We have Esmay Luck-Hille, who was an artist, a musician, who kind of organically fell into the NFT rabbit hole and came out on the other side as the senior marketing manager at SuperRare Labs. And then we have Leeor Groen, who is the director at Spartan Group, which is a crypto asset manager with a metaverse fund. And Camilla McFarland, who's an advisor at Serotonin and a VP of partnerships at Mojito, which helps brands break into the space. So I guess to kind of start off, I feel like, you know, last year we were all talking about the boom in illiquid JPEGs, but it feels like the industry has kind of moved beyond that now. So where are we? Just kind of, let's take stock a little.
Wow, where are we? So obviously there's been a huge amount of growth. We're seeing NFT platforms and projects exploding across different industries. As Camilla, I'm sure, will speak to with brands and stuff, we're seeing the kind of mainstream adoption. And I've always thought that NFTs are kind of the gateway to blockchain technology and crypto because of the kind of mainstream appeal through art, music, fashion, and you're starting to see lots of NFT use cases and communities growing amongst those different verticals. And lots of exciting projects that utilize the technology in lots of different ways. So I feel like we're kind of definitely launching into the mainstream on the NFT space.
And I would say it's a good reminder that around this time last year is when the 69 million Beeple sale happened at Christie's. And so the NFT market within at least like the crypto native community, it started picking up around 2 years ago, like around the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. But then it was spring of last year where that sale happened, and that really put it on the front of papers and sort of into the zeitgeist and into the common conversation because the price tag was so big. And the buyers of it met in COVID, and you can argue that that was sort of what they were trying to do with great, albeit expensive marketing. And so in the last year, because it was the Beeple sale, I think a lot of people's initial conceptualization of NFTs was art. And using a non-fungible token to host a JPEG, essentially, to host an image. And then you had, you know, Phillips, Christie's, Sotheby's get in. I've been working, my company Mojito has been working with Sotheby's over the last year to help them enter the market and build out their platform. And so you've seen a lot of art, conversation around art, starting to move into music and other parts of culture. And there's sort of, I think what we've seen is some of the crypto native artists, like the Bored Apes, the Punks, Doodles, Invisible Friends, all those 10K profile photo projects come, but also traditional artists start to get in. Koons yesterday just announced his first NFT project. Damien Hirst has entered, some traditional artists have, so there's these subcategories with NFTs we're starting to see, but all of that's just happened in the last year, and so it'll be exciting to see how it evolves going forward with brands and other things.
Yeah, and just to add to that, to extend the monologue here on where we are with NFTs, I think it's an important opportunity to take a step back and recognize, you know, probably even just 2 years ago, for most people, NFT was a 3-letter word, which, excuse my French, probably meant nothing fucking there. And here we are now talking about it as if it's, you know, the next version of a Bitcoin, innovation within the crypto economy and the ecosystem, which today is, you know, for those of us turning up at events such as these, an exciting part of the industry. And we have creators and all sorts of new people coming into this industry who are excited about bridging technology with traditional, you know, physical assets, which is an idea that many people have been trying to do in crypto for a long time, but have never really had a way to build a community around it. And I'm thinking about real estate and a lot of these kind of physical assets that people were trying to digitize for many years. So now is really the first time where I would say we have concrete opportunities where people are able to have digital representation and ownership. And now that's starting to go not just from the crypto degens, of which we are proudly, you know, supporting and include ourselves to be, but really about everyone else and how we get this in front of, you know, the rest of the world and real world adoption.
I feel like that's a great lead into this, like, perhaps somewhat provocative question from an anonymous member of the audience who asked, would you agree for the most part NFTs in their current form have little to no utility? Is that starting to change now, or kind of is that a problem at all? I think like that's also the other question.
I mean,
I'm happy to
go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
and again, NFT just stands for non-fungible token. I very naively, back when I was at Consensus, thought that the killer use case for NFTs was going to be real estate contracts and real estate fractionalization. I'm really glad that it's been art and culture and cooler things that help onboard everybody else into the conversation. But you know, a lot of what's driven the price action in the last year has certainly been these PFP projects. Bored Apes now in the hands of Madonna and Justin Bieber, and Heidi Klum owns a CryptoPunk, and so does Jay-Z, and that's sort of been a lot of like the face of the cover of the textbook of this chapter of NFTs for sure has been the PFP projects. I think I wouldn't say that those in and of themselves have some utility, which is access to a community, and especially with everyone being at home for the last 2 years and spending most of their productive work, play, everything online, those communities have had real utility to them. The Bored Ape Yacht Club now, you get access to great parties where the Strokes perform, you get IRL in real life benefits, you also get digital benefits by being part of a digital community that Justin Bieber also belongs to. But I'd say in terms of utility, when we're working and having lots of conversations with traditional brands now, whether it's fashion brands, sports teams. We just launched Liverpool Football Club's NFT project today. It just went live this afternoon, so any LFC fans out there, you can buy with credit card at Sotheby's Metaverse. And working with brands, the conversation is all about utility. And they see it as really an access to a membership program, a loyalty program, and finding new ways for customers, fans, consumers to interact with the brand that they love, interact with that IP. And for a sports team, certainly, it's seeding a community of NFT holders, a liquid membership club, if you will. And then that group gets, you know, live match day chats with each other within the gated Discord, access to discounts, raffles, giveaways, all those things. So I think utility is what brands are really, really excited about, other than just minting like a photo of their label or something.
Yeah. And on the art side, you know, you're seeing utility kind of as well. It's a really important conversation for sovereign artists, let alone brands, where they can, you know, offer certain things with the NFT, which, you know, so you've got ownership over the NFT, but then you get a whole host of other things, and you see artists can start to build worlds around their art in a way that they've never been able to before. And so that's kind of another form of utility that comes with a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, does that mean sort of in the future we'll see a stronger link between the IP rights and NFTs? I think that's been a question in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, so I mean, you've just seen the IP rights, you know, Bored Ape Yacht Club it's kind of a genius move, because you, to the point about like aligning incentives with your community, you know, you've got, if you give your the IP rights behind that artwork to the owners, then you've got people amplifying the brand like never before. I think, like, is it Jarvis the Valet now signed with CAA? You know, you've got kind of Universal Music Group creating
And to stress
a
that point, a Bored Ape now has its own agent to manage it.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. So the IP, you know, that can really, really amplify a whole movement. Really.
And I think, I mean, Bored Ape's a great example, because this is, you know, one, we will have all seen the kind of ApeCoin DAO come through there, and what that really means in terms of not just having an NFT itself, but what you can connect that to, and this idea of digital and IP ownership. I mean, that's a key part of it. But the other equally important part, and the word we keep mentioning, is community. And the reason why that's so important, when we talk about, excuse me, when we talk about what this space is really all about, I mean, if we think about the way in which the crypto community has evolved and, you know, pushed this blockchain technology to a level of adoption that it's reached today, this is actually the first technological innovation that's ever been driven bottom-up, right? Consumer-led, consumer-driven. Cloud computing, the invention of the internet, all of these things were started, designed either for military application, for in a factory somewhere to do something. Whereas here we really have a technology which has come fundamentally from a different side of the spectrum and has really brought people about it. And, you know, 10 years ago, this was the Bitcoin maximalists who were effectively operating like a religion, many of those still around today. And now we're finding ways in which we can bring that and package that into things which are not just JPEGs of rocks, right, being flipped on any platform which makes sense for people doing it, but for what is the long-term intrinsic value of having a community. How do you actually reward and engage people and keep them incentivized in what you're doing, and the mechanism by which you're actually assigning that ownership, right? And that's what it is about, digital ownership and representation of that ownership. This is what is the technological innovation here from the NFT perspective, and that's where we see a lot of the things going forward.
Yeah, and that kind of sense of community really is at the heart of kind of, I think, the success of NFTs and their, extreme power. Like if you just compare things to Web 2 platforms, I mean, building community and monetization tools for artists and creators has always been there as a massive driver for the successes of Web 2 platforms. But Web 3 really, really supercharges that. And the technological, developments have enabled so many things for artists around community. So you're just seeing innovation after innovation with so many different things, and it's really exciting to watch.
Yeah. And we'll probably all say the word community so much up here during the next couple minutes that it'll lose its meaning. But it's hard to understate the value of community consumerism in the way that you're seeing around NFTs, where you already have something in common with another person that owns a similar project as you. And you see that even within Damien Hirst's pieces. It's not just the Bored Apes, and I would love if the understanding of NFTs did move past that project. But collective consumerism in that kind of way, and network-driven sort of gamified investments, we've certainly seen happen over the last 2 years between GameStop and crypto in general, and the way people are investing. But you see that in spades and NFTs in a different kind of way that I think is quite unique.
I feel like I'm going to bring up the word community here again, but a lot of the time, from a journalist perspective, every day my inbox is filled with these pitches about NFT projects, and a lot of them are, brands trying to jump onto the bandwagon. Sometimes it makes, I think, all of us roll our eyes a little bit. What are the challenges brands face in kind of getting onto this trend and not seeming like, they're just here to take advantage of the crypto community?
I mean,
you feel like that is a problem?
No. I think it can be. Art Tactic released an NFT art market report late last year, and it was interesting because it said that of Gen Z and millennial collectors of NFTs, 96% are buying for emotional reasons, 76% are buying for to support the artist, and 59% of them are buying for investment reasons. And so that really kind of outlines the strength of emotional and social value that NFTs have and the reasons behind the purchasing, which makes, I think, maybe a bit difficult for brands to get involved, as there's not a specific personal artist that they're trying to align with. But I don't know, we work with brands at SuperRare as well, and I think the ones that really, really do it well are ones that don't see it as a short-term, jump in, let's just release, 1,000 collectible items. They do it with a long-term strategy, which is to build a community, but also, working with digitally native artists in the space, really demonstrating commitment to this new generation of creators on the platforms.
And I would say there's a present time answer to this question and a future answer. I think at present, as we heard some of the stats in the introduction, it's important to remember, although NFTs has reached Bloomberg and the covers of all the papers we read and reached the zeitgeist, and now pretty much every major brand you can think of is kind of dipped a toe into this space. SuperRare's certainly sold a lot of those brands. It's important to remember that monthly active wallets interacting with NFT contracts is still anywhere between 200,000 and 400,000 a month, which is so small. I personally have about 4 active NFT wallets that I use, so you can probably divide that number by at least 2 or 3 to actually get number of users in this space. And that's pretty Web3 native, transacting on platforms like SuperRare, like OpenSea, Luck-Hille, whatever they might be. But for major brands getting in, it's also our key, as you were saying earlier, to adoption, because they bring their fan base with them. And right now, if you were to say to a lot of the fan base of Adidas or LFC, which has hundreds of millions of fans around the world, okay, you have to buy your crypto on Coinbase, transfer it into your MetaMask wallet. You have to go to these platforms, deal with things like gas prices and congestion on the network. That's really difficult. And so a lot of what we're doing, or working with brands to sort of help guide them through, is sort of what we call a Web 2.5 step, which is where you have the option to transact in credit card. You can get a semi-custodial wallet where you buy the NFT and a wallet is created for you. And then you can bring that on chain, and that can still be all the benefits of NFTs, which is composability, exists in other secondary markets, et cetera. So I'd say there's a long way to go as brands enter. But if I were to add one point to what you were saying, a lot of brands still think, and I wouldn't even call it Web 2, but just traditional product terms, where they do a product launch and it's a one and done. And they see the price action happening in NFTs. And so without a doubt, some see it as sort of a honeypot or a money-making opportunity. For brands that approach it like that and structure their project like that, the existing community of those active monthly wallets, they sniff that out so quickly. But as you were saying, brands that really think about building their Web3, or if you will, their metaverse presence for the long term, and see the value in building this sort of community of owners, they really get it, and they get the long-term value, and they're super excited to build it, and they're all hiring a head of digital community or a head of metaverse to launch the project, seed their NFTs, and then figure out new ways to engage and continue to create value for that group. And so I'm super excited to see more of that happen, and hopefully less of the latter, of brands just thinking, they can ride this wave and then rug pull their fire.
I mean, you kind of mentioned gas fees, and here we also have a question kind of about whether gas fees are kind of an impediment to kind of the growth of the industry. I mean, do you think that is an issue right now, especially in terms of Ethereum? And are we going to see more interchain competition in the NFT space?
Yeah, so I think doing anything on Ethereum at the moment now is a problem, right? The gas fees. This has really been spoken about, consistently every year, top of mind, center of everything that's going on with ETH 2.0. Frankly, I live in Switzerland, and we had Vitalik in 2018 at the TechCrunch event talking about, at the time it was the Casper upgrade that they were looking to launch, about how they were going to solve the scalability issues of ETH. 2022, 4 years later, we're still dealing with many of the issues that we have intrinsic in Ethereum, and I'm sure regardless of what chain you back, what religion you're in, right? I think we all agree that this is an important part of the industry as a whole, like believers, let's say, who are supporting this ecosystem. So, nowadays, what's been the trend, obviously, is this multi-chain, right? Everything needs to be chain agnostic in terms of how you're building and scaling for the next 10 years. Of course, there are iterations and steps to get there, but this idea that we need to have one blockchain, I don't think people subscribe to that notion or idea anymore. So finding a way to create scalable solutions on that, be it layer 2, be it whatever kind of layer 1 that is scalable for whatever reason, be it proof of stake mechanism and so forth. This is a non-starter for us to get from where we are today with, what was the number, 1.x million. If these are the gas fees when there's this many people trading NFTs or whatever, flipping them and having fun, what is it going to happen when we have, real, meaningful, decentralized communities at scale for not only the half of the world's population that has access to the internet, but everyone else that's coming on and funneling into some form of decentralized community, which is representative of their life. So this is, I think, by far and large, the biggest issue we face in the industry is getting this right. And disappointingly, it's taken much longer than everyone anticipated to get even to where we are now.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm going to kind of tie together a few questions here, which I think have to do with the fact that, for every Bored Apes or blockbuster collection, you kind of have a lot of duds in the space, and I was reading kind of this story that quoted a report from Nansen, and it kind of said, on average, 1 in 3 NFT collections kind of expire with almost no trading activity. And another 1 in 3 kind of trades below the amount it costs the issuer to mint the token. So meaning that kind of, we hear a lot about these success stories, but actually it's really hard to pick them out and kind of be right. And we also have people in the audience asking about the risk of rug pulls and how you even value NFTs. I guess the question is how do you pick what to invest in the NFT space, and kind of is the sort of the distribution of success there going to turn people off?
Interesting. SuperRare is a curated marketplace. And last year we became a DAO, and via the Rare token, we're progressively decentralizing curation. And curation seems to be, as there are going to be trillions of NFTs, curation is going to be the kind of way that you can contextualize what you're buying. And we see it, across the traditional art landscape. Curation is, what's this artist doing? Why is it significant? Why is there value behind this? And SuperRare at the moment has, an editorial section to their site that we focus a lot on that kind of side of the artworks. And through the DAO and through owning the Rare token, our community will be curating the platform. The network, in fact, at the moment we are having independent galleries propose to come on to SuperRare, and they're all voted on by the token holders. And there are going to be more and more kind of curation elements to that as well. So for me, I've always thought as curation as the contextualization of what you're buying, and so kind of educating yourself on that. From kind of a personal viewpoint as well, I think you've got to buy what you love. And that's always the case with art. And do your due diligence as well. And it can be really hard, but I guess a lot of people say this in the traditional art market as well, do your research on the artist, do your research on the products that they're selling, always go straight to the source as well. That would be something. Sorry, I'm kind of going on and on.
Well, I would, just to add to that, that thinking here, there's always going to be bad actors, right? This is the way things work. And even on the BBC News, right, if you go to the comment section on any topic, right, be it sports, be it current affairs, the amount of nonsense, from my opinion, nonsense that gets posted and people are discussing, not even in chat forums, right? This is on news articles. That's the reality of the web, right? So to think that that's not going to happen within a very specific segment of the web, which is much more internet native, crypto native, opportunistic for the right or wrong reasons. To think that that's not going to happen is also, I think, a bit naive. Question is then, how do we see the big picture, right? And I think taking a step back here, the reason I'm so convinced and bullish around the NFT opportunity set and what really this represents when we talk about IP rights and what that represents. If we take a look at Wikipedia, for example, for most of my life, referencing Wikipedia on anything, research, school, university work, this would have been the stupidest thing you could ever do. Everyone was looking at it, right? But everyone then had to go and look at Encyclopedia Britannica to try to get an actual reference you could use that your professor would accept, right? So this idea that the collective wisdom of people was worse than what was gathered in a library or in the Encyclopedia Britannica has fundamentally proved to be wrong, right? So the collective wisdom of the crowd over time has proven to be the more effective database and repository of information. And nowadays, the way in which I just wish they'd stop asking for donations, 6 times a year, and let's get the Wikipedia coin going, right, so that we can actually move past that.
Jimmy Wales did an NFT.
Well, there we go. So, that's where these things need to go eventually, where we have the community side of it coming together, who have an incentive and reward mechanism to do this. There's unique IP which is being built into a large database at that scale, which has happened already for the internet revolution, let's say, information revolution, and now we want to translate that into a way which is actively engaging and rewarding the community for their involvement, their engagements, their interactions with it. And I think that this model can exist in Web 2, and it's going to exist on steroids, frankly, in a Web 3 environment where we have so many more connected or interconnected people and opportunities and things rather than just an information source.
Yeah, and I would say to the original question of, and I agree with both of your answers, but to the original question of how do you value an NFT project, it's almost asking how do you value art to buy, or which sort of jam do you pick at the supermarket? It's not unique to NFTs, it just comes down, in my view, to brand and storytelling and what is the meaning behind it. A lot of people in the last 2 years, certainly in the crypto space, have become meme investors. I am a member of Pleaser DAO, and so am among them for buying the Doge meme and then later fractionalizing it. And so things that have mimetic value, that a lot of people subscribe value to, have power, and you see the same thing in art. And then as brands enter, that brings a level of credentialization that you sort of have a little bit of trust in what that is. And there's also, depending on your goals as a buyer, some people just buy, especially with all of the amazingly beautiful curated art on SuperRare, they buy what they love. And you can probably get a similar range of answers in the art market of some people only buy art for investment purposes, some people only buy art because they have a personal value to it, some people only buy art because they know the artist. So there's a myriad of answers, but I would say certainly in the early days of NFTs, all of the notices around making sure it is a legitimate project, making sure you at least do a little bit of due diligence, check the Twitter followers, the Discord, does it have a real team? Are they anonymous? Are they doxxed? Is it something that you feel confident putting your money behind, I would say.
Or not, and then recognize what you're doing and enjoy that route as well, which is also an equally fundamental part of this industry too.
Yeah, so. And it's just worth adding as well, like the amazingness about NFTs is kind of the things that artists can build in to tell their story as well, from like attributes on series contracts, whole bodies of works of art. The way that, Ferocious, I think, is releasing a whole kind of metaverse. We're still waiting to know exactly what it is, but I think on the 3rd or 4th of April. There's whole kind of stories behind the NFTs that are evolving, and it's a really powerful way of artists telling their stories, but also collectors engaging with this creator's work directly. So.
Leeor, can I ask you, how does your firm's metaverse fund pick its investment, for instance?
Yeah, so Spartan Group, right? We have recently launched and did a first close of our metaverse and gaming fund. We have a longer track record investing in the space, and for us, we have very established ways of evaluating early stage projects. So I think that's one side of it, is coming in, first check investor in a lot of up and coming initiatives. I think the other side of it though, and this is really what we've been doing for the past 4 years, is we run a hedge fund, right, which is more on the liquid side and trading assets throughout the industry. And I think bringing those together, we've made some bets in the likes of the Axie Infinities of this world, Merit Circle and Wilder World to be some of the other projects that we've been backing as a group. I think that these are large infrastructure plays, so we're really focused on, if this is going to be a $1 trillion market, what are the ways that we get there, right? So one answer is, of course, we need to own, in metaverse or in digital world, whichever you want to call it, digital land assets. So that's one thing that we're doing, very specifically. But where we are today in terms of real adoption, real establishment, and where I think most of the investment dollars going, frankly, right, is into establishing the backbone of that, right? So similar to what we've had rising now with DeFi, money moving into the actual native DEX tokens and your Aves and a lot of these kind of yield generating protocols. That was kind of first step, and then we've started doing things on top of that, such as synthetic trading and facilitating other things. And that's where I see our adoption cycle on the metaverse and gaming side for us to be able to look at, what is NFTs and how do they represent it. So the NFT investment case alone is not a straightforward one, because it touches on literally everything going on, frankly, in the technology sector. But then specifically here, right, it's more, there are in metaverse world assets that we want to buy and hold, and frankly, the way in which we're doing that through our venture fund at the moment is participating in DAOs, in guilds, which are actually going out and one example is Perion, right? So this is a group which is sending out and created a treasury to go and actually buy and lend out and earn yield on in-game assets. So gamers who are going to be holding, or who are already, right, holding and using specific weapons, and getting celebrities who are buying these and using these weapons to be able to lend them in specific tournaments, for example, right? So there are so many innovative ways of making money time will tell how effective and successful they are in terms of getting critical mass. But this is, thinking of this as a linear innovation, again, has always been wrong. It was wrong if that was your thesis on Bitcoin. This is not a linear one-to-one ecosystem. This is a network effect organization or decentralized community, and that's really what you're betting on here. So any way to get exposure to that is what we're interested in and where we're spending our time.
We have a great question from Daniel in the audience. What justifies the $4 billion valuation of Yuga Labs, the makers of Bored Apes?
I could speak about this for days.
Do you have a model?
Yeah. Look, honestly, the Yuga Labs, what's happened there, I think, is one of the most pivotal moments in the NFT story of this industry, right? Because we've had such a mainstream acceptance of something being interesting and relevant for whatever reason, right? Everyone here has heard about it. I won't comment on whether that's a good or a bad thing, but we have. We're excited about what they're doing with the ape coin and how they're actually going about and incentivizing a community. And the way in which this industry has evolved, right? I mean, capital is not the barrier anymore for people to actually implement and adopt innovation, right? You have technical talent in this industry, you have money being thrown at it because of recycled proceeds from what's going on in this industry, and then it's about, what are the future prospects? And I think looking at that deal, I mean, what is the future value of the most well-recognized brand on future IP and digital infrastructure ownership of that IP in the world, right? And I think that $4 billion, when you look at it from that perspective, sounds like a lot of money. But when we talk about music revenue royalties, we haven't even spoken about music yet, but we're talking about art for now. I mean, even streaming royalties at the moment is a $57 billion income generating field a year, right? So, I mean, these are the numbers that are behind what we consider digital consumption of goods and services. So going into this iteration of, are they going to be the first ones to really capture that pivot from pure art and pictures, let's say, and a community DAO approach into music and IP ownership on all other aspects of our consumption and digital consumption? I mean, they're in a pretty good position to do that, and I don't understand why they wouldn't, right? So that premium certainly sounds like a hefty number, but that opportunity set is just so much more attractive, right? And I think that's how people looking at this see that opportunity and are willing to price that. That happened in the matter of weeks, frankly, right? So that came and happened basically overnight.
And I would say, back to the IP question. First of all, a lot of valuations in crypto are a little eye-watering at the moment for different reasons. But sort of where the value I do think lies, as you're saying, is that IP question. And I don't think that all brands and all NFT projects need to have IP ownership rights attached to it. And there's also not yes or no, there's sort of different versions of that. There's stipulations within it. But one of the things that Yuga Labs got really right and pretty early, it was like them and NounsDAO and a few others, where by owning that NFT, you did have IP rights over it. So you could put your NFT, your Bored Ape, in a rom-com, or have them star in a Super Bowl commercial, or put them on a t-shirt and sell the t-shirts. And you really had ownership rights over that IP. And now that they've scooped up CryptoPunks, which previously you couldn't do that, Larva Labs, you couldn't really do that much with your punk. You could use your Twitter profile photo, but you couldn't really build a brand around it in the same way. And so now that you can, and they have the Punks empire too, and at least to their latest video and their latest leaked deck that's now all over the internet, that they're scooping up other IP projects and building this whole digital world. It's kind of endless what that empire looks like they can create. It's harder to control because it doesn't mean that Bored Ape won't end up in porn or being used in some weird ways. It's hard for them to control that. But they do have every owner being a marketer for them.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's also a project that, seemingly brings brand, a metaverse, IP, community, again, incentive alignment, and then they've just extended, with the ApeCoin, it's not just an exclusive club of people who can benefit from this. It's now, the ApeCoin holders as well. So you've just got everything supercharged in one project. And I'd also say, if they are able to deliver on the kind of UX of their metaverse that's interoperable, then, it's just far beyond what we've seen so far. So that,
Which is how investors are pricing the industry, right? It's not, is 4 billion too much? Are we crazy? It's what if we get it right, and what are the implications of that? And it's risk capital, and that's what they're going after.
Cool. Thank you very much to my panelists. I feel like there should have been a drinking game for every time we say community, but you know, the bar was not open yet, I heard. But it's going to be very soon. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, and come talk to us. We're going to be around. And yeah, go on out.